Nothing leaves you more exposed than having your entire operating system wiped without warning. For me, that happened when I was in the shower. I was struck by lightning. I remember stumbling out of the bathroom, wearing a towel and telling my mom I'd been hit, and then nothing. Not the ambulance, not the emergency room, not even the ride home. My brain simply stopped recording. I have one snippet of memory. It starts with a nurse aggressively demanding that I remove my white stockings. But since my brain had been rebooted by Mother Nature herself, I have no idea how many times she repeated that sentence. Finally, she got so frustrated with me, she grabbed to pinch that white nylon and realized, oh my God, that is her leg. She was horrified. Short of a toe tag, I don't think she'd ever seen anybody that white. She bolted out of that room as if she had been the one electrocuted. Now, immediately following, the doctor walked in. He said I was extremely lucky. Well, then he tried to explain the bizarre physics of what had happened to me. When you are struck in the shower, the sheets of water over your skin create an uninterrupted pathway, what he called a perfect circuit. Energy enters one point and just exits another. But if that pathway is broken, the energy can burrow deep in your body, and when it comes into contact with bone or cartilage, it can create explosive trapped thermal energy. He said it literally could have blasted a hole out of my elbows or my kneecaps. I was somehow a perfect circuit. I am very lucky. I love looking at it that way. In my lifetime, I survived that lightning. I survived paralysis, 2 spinal surgeries, numerous accidental overdoses, an attack by a swarm of bees, which is where I learned I was allergic, and so many other life-threatening events that I have been nicknamed the Grim Reaper's favorite chew toy. When you face that many near-death experiences, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And just start asking, okay, what cosmic nonsense are we dealing with today? As a comedian who teaches artificial intelligence, I've become to believe that the world actually works on an aggressive algorithmic feedback loop. It's as if the grand programmer is looking down on my source code and saying, ooh, she survived electricity. Let's see how she handles a structural collapse. And evading every line on death's list, I have learned a lot of things. Well, so far, I have learned a lot of things. First, the Grim Reaper has terrible aim. But more importantly, I have learned the fine art of the pivot. Because machines can grind data, but only humans can survive the impossible. To show you how I saw that in action, I need to take you back to the year 2006. My partner and I were trying to purchase a collision repair business, which makes perfect financial sense because he has been repairing and fixing things his whole life. I have been hitting things with cars for mine. My dad has called me Crash since I learned how to drive. Also in 2006, I flew down a flight of stairs. And true to my name, I crashed. But I also cracked open L4 and L5 spinal discs. Now those discs contain gel, and that gel can just dissipate into the body as it leaks out. But mine didn't. It decided to form a literal giant spike and lodge itself directly in my sciatic nerve, bending it nearly in half. The pain was unholy, but worse, there was no top surgeon that would operate. They would take one look at my MRI, and they didn't want to touch me. So they flooded my motherboard with every painkiller and narcotic known to man. Morphine, opioids, Valium, muscle relaxers, you name it, I had it. I was my own pharmacy. But when you're in that kind of pain, your biological clock hallucinates. I was positive that 6 hours had elapsed when it may have only been 15, 20 minutes, and I would take another combination of those pills. There were 12 and 24-hour periods where I consumed bottles and bottles and bottles of those narcotics. I should have died from an overdose multiple times over. Neuroscientists have discovered that extreme trauma can cause your biological clock to malfunction. My brain wasn't just in pain, it was truly offline. But I am extremely lucky. And I did not die mercifully. But I also couldn't lay there and wait for my body to reboot. So I turned to my laptop. There were times where I had no use of my legs, no use of my arms, a combination, or I was completely frozen from the chin down. But on the days my hands worked, I typed. And I completed a young adult urban fiction novel, the business plan and the financial pro forma for our collision repair business. In January of 2008, a very brave top surgeon offered to operate. And 12 hours after that operation, I was in 99% less pain than I had been, even with a brand new hole in my spine. So I never took another pill. But that launched me into a very dangerous cold turkey, followed by months and months of miserable withdrawals. Now, also in 2008, the bank took that financial pro forma and business plan and awarded us our collision repair shop. And in June of 2008, we signed just under $1 million in loans. 30 days later, the economy collapsed into the Great Recession. If you want to learn the meaning of true comedy, try explaining to your brand new commercial loan officer that you can't make your brand new payments because of an economic collapse, when their genuine question to you is, well, who can't afford a $500 deductible? And you want to say, hello, everybody. During that time, we are one of the very few businesses at our bank that survived that catastrophe. The Great Recession ended, they say, in the summer of 2009. But I can tell you the repercussions lasted well into 2010. And during that time, more gel leaked out of my spinal disc, formed another spike, went into the path of least resistance, and forced me into spinal surgery number 2. My life was less of a corporate ladder and more of a high-stakes game of Survivor, where the Grim Reaper keeps trying to vote me off the island. But I wasn't alone. I had an incredible family and a wonderful team, so we all worked together and pushed. Fast forward 10 years, finally it felt like, hey, we're gonna make it. Things are gonna be okay. This business has a chance. And, the 2020 COVID collapse happens and shut everything down. Now, our business relies on everybody driving into things. Suddenly, no one was driving anywhere. I was a woman with a bionic spine, massive liabilities, and an empty garage. Talk about a total loss. AI and software models would have looked at that pathway and the new data and said, bankruptcy. This business cannot survive. But we didn't look at it that way. We performed what Harvard Business Review calls a purposeful pivot. Versatile leaders plant one leg in their core values and swing the other to match the environment. Our anchor was precision. Our pivot was to bypass that frozen consumer market, add municipalities, seek fleet companies, and eventually partner with original equipment manufacturers. We went back to the basics, shrunk to a small skeleton crew, and planned a future rebuild. Today, businesses are planning their future rebuilds, and they're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence factors into that forecast. Some CEOs believe that AI will automate them right out of their field. Some employees believe they will no longer have a job. There are some people that see AI as an unkillable, perfect force infiltrating everything. But as someone who teaches AI, I know it has a fatal flaw. AI struggles when the future no longer resembles the past. When a machine encounters an industry losing its footprint, an economic collapse, or just a catastrophic event, it enters a state called catastrophic forgetting, meaning if you teach AI everything there is to know about cats and suddenly only talk about dogs, it doesn't just learn about dogs. It completely deletes everything it knew about cats. Catastrophic forgetting, if you'll excuse the pun. The system has a total meltdown while the brain tries to rewrite the standard code to the new environment. During COVID, we didn't just try to survive. We retooled. And according to a few manufacturers, we elevated into the top 10% of all collision repair businesses in the United States. And standing here today, on the nation's 250th birthday, I realize our skeleton crew was performing the most important American tradition there is, the impossible pivot. In 1776, a small group of men were in a hot Philadelphia room signing their name to a massive liability, the Declaration of Independence. Talk about a no-data environment. There was no data to show that any kind of democracy could scale. They were a skeleton crew facing the largest military of their time with the true possibility of hanging for treason. King George was running the standard old colonial code, and our forefathers decided to hit Control-Alt-Delete. They saw that broken framework, and they re-engineered a new system of human potential. The American blueprint. We don't survive because we are perfect. We survive because when the lightning strikes, we possess the determination to reboot. Pivots require adaptation and change, and sometimes that brings fear. You are facing the unknown. Only living creatures understand what that means. When my body was broken, my brain adapted. When the economy was broken, our business adapted. Humans don't just survive disruption. We reinvent ourselves through it. AI doesn't do that. The leaders that are going to thrive over the next 250 years will not be the ones who just add automated tools. They will be the ones who adapt, pivot, and make confident decisions when the data no longer makes sense. You cannot stop lightning from striking, but when the system fails, when the data disappears, when the road ahead no longer makes sense, algorithms hesitate. Humans improvise.